Hi, everybody. Let's see. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the UX key review for August. Just a reminder, please don't mention any customers, and then also a reminder to everyone not to present. I think we just go ahead and jump to number 4 here, which was an update from me from the last key review around Sid's question around navigation. Y'all can read it for yourself, but Sid, it looks like you have a comment.
Yeah, thanks. I like that we're diving into this. It seems that the approach, as far as I could see it in Figma, is moving stuff from the left to the top. Is that it, or is there something else I'm overlooking?
Yeah, so it does. It takes what is currently in the sub navigation and moves it into the main content area. Now, where we felt like this was a good intersection with your request is that it does get settings and analytics available within the product area to which it's related. And also we'll still have a separate settings section, because what we've heard in research is users are interested in finding settings both ways.
It's not necessarily against it. I don't know what is better for users, but I just don't see how the two are related. It basically means, hey, we're gonna remove one level from the left menu and add that on top of it. Okay, the left menu stays more constant, that's great. And then the page I'm looking at gets more cluttered. So it's like, could be good, could be bad, but I don't think it's changing something fundamentally. The proposal I made said, hey, let's make sure that we have a different way of accessing it. I don't think this change is necessary for that, or it's two things bundled up into one. It's making settings available as a submenu and moving from the left to right. I don't see how it's necessary for making the settings available from the submenu.
I will give you information, but we are still exploring this. So please don't think my information means we know 100% either. And you may have more questions as I give you more information as well. So one of the primary complaints we hear in user research is that the left nav is too cluttered. Because it's so cluttered, people can't find things. And so the idea being, if we can make that simpler and move those submenu items over and then also order them, what we are also seeing from data is that usually 2 to 3 of the sub nav items get 90 or 95% of the traffic. And so we would order those first, and less important things could fall to the end, making them still accessible, but just not so in your face. Because that's the feedback that we're getting is, yeah, you're giving me everything, you're giving it to me all the time. I don't need it all the time that way. There is, this may or may not address part of what you're thinking about right now in the longer term exploration. What that also allows us to do is move into a model potentially, which we need to do user research on this, because these are big changes, where we group things by how users are thinking about the category. So you can see we can group things into build. I think the next one was, let's see here, I got to pull it up because I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Right. Okay. So build would have like repository and issues and boards. Release would have deployments and registries and monitoring, allowing us to further simplify the left nav.
So I agree the left nav is cluttered. I think the risk is that we move the clutter from the left nav to the top of the page, which is already like, it already has a lot of selectors and filters and all kinds of stuff, and we're adding this on top. So I think we're solving one thing and we run the risk of creating a new problem where people complain that the main page is cluttered instead of the left nav. I think what's happening is that we listen to the specific users we optimize for each user of each function instead of for a GitLab user. So if you look at our planning tools, like super high adoption, like 80%. If you look at create, super high adoption, 80%. If you look at verify, super high adoption, like 80%. If you look at release, like boom, drops by half. If you look at everything else, like below 20%. And I couldn't tell that by kind of what I see in the menu in GitLab. Like it is not reflected. So if people are complaining about the clutter, I would love for us to make sure that we optimize GitLab for the average user. Now that's going to make it harder for some of these new categories, for some of these new stages to succeed. And I want them to succeed. So I'm not jumping with joy. But if you look at our main, like repository, super heavy usage, issues, super heavy usage, merge requests, super heavy usage, requirements and merge requests, the difference in usage is probably 5 orders of magnitude. I think from the top of my head, I'm trying to find it, but I think we have 300 users for this. I think we got like, I don't think there's a single GitLab user that doesn't use this. How do we put 2 things that have 5 orders of magnitudes in difference on the same level? Yes, if you do that, then you get cluttered. We cannot do that. CI/CD, great, ton of usage, makes sense. Security and compliance, okay, well, big revenue driver. So maybe there's an argument there. Deployments, whoa, where we're going, that's kind of part of CI/CD. Would the product manager of deployments want it here? Yes. Is it in our future? Yes. Am I pushing the team every day? Like, hey, make sure that release appeals to operators? Yes. But should it be here? Monitor. How many users do we have for monitor? It's not really good right now. Like, I think incident management is getting really good, but all the other stuff isn't quite there. Infrastructure, this is more like a settings thing. Serverless platforms, nobody uses that. Terraform, super useful, but other ways to get there. So I think we don't take it into account. And I think that's the way to solve it. I think moving the clutter is just going to end up with new clutter.
Could I share my screen? I think the long-term vision starts to address this for you.
Great.
And that's where we move. If we move build, that's where when you enter the product, this would be your default view. You would see repositories, issues, boards, merge requests, and CI/CD, which are our highest usage items. And then other things become less pronounced. And you can get a sense of what's in them, but you don't have to see everything that's in them unless you want to, in which case you can expand it. Does that start to address what you're thinking about?
I think we're on the same page. I don't like this implementation, but I think we have the same goal. Like, hey, let's make sure that the stuff that's relevant to people is there. And we got this super hard problem where we're catering to 3-4 very different audiences like dev, sec, ops, and biz. So that's super hard. And I don't expect to solve it in this call, but I'd love us to do smaller iterations. This is not the first time I mentioned requirements as having a very different usage profile than the rest. And we spent months and nothing changed. So I think we need to iterate more. And I love that. I had that that concept, it has the right idea, but we can do stuff today where we say, hey, we're just going to combine deployments and infrastructure because it's pretty similar and it would have about as many submenu items. Now, I don't know that's the right call. I do know that putting requirements under a submenu would clean up a little bit of clutter, and considering the usage, it will be a reasonable thing to do. And I think we're making really, we should be looking at the big picture, but I'm just not seeing the iteration. And I think it's needed.
Yeah, one of the things that we're finding is even tiny iterations are apparently a really large technical lift. So there's an example of that in the agenda.
Yep, I read through that, but I think that's really worthwhile work, and it's hard, and so be it. I think if I phrase it, let's make sure I understood it right. It's like, hey, we wanted all the settings relevant to merge requests, want to bundle them, and it's like that's super hard to do because they're all over the place. Well, that's good that we're trying to do that, and I'll be patient, and I think that's okay. I think, like, I don't know, indenting requirements below the most relevant main menu, like that doesn't strike me as, but maybe that's hard. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that it's hard. I think it doesn't solve the core problem that we're hearing from users, which we are, like you, we are really trying to hone in on what is it that our users want from this, because this is a big pain point that we're hearing about. So we can make small iterative changes like the fixing the merge requests problem, but we think that overall larger changes are needed. And so, for example, moving settings and analytics as sub items, that in and of itself is a huge change. So if we're talking about these big changes that we're trying to track towards, we want to make sure that we've got a good long-term vision that we're shooting at. Now, the last wireframe that I just showed, we need to get that through user research. We don't know yet, just like you said, you don't know whether or not that's the right forward direction. We would need to do a lot of user research on this. Navigation is not something that we can take lightly.
No, like, I think big navigation changes require a lot of research, and they're hard. I've seen a few, the bundling, I've seen the moving, etc. It might be that these big things are not actually the solution, but it's lots of small things. But I don't think that us working on the big stuff has to hold up the small stuff. I see infrastructure having the same, way less usage for that specific functionality that's under it, being on the same level. Like, yeah, that's causing clutter. I think we have to be more strict of the amount of users. And when I first mentioned requirements, like months ago, it was like, yeah, we did user research for the users who used requirements. They thought it should be in the top menu. Yes, I betcha. But we should incorporate how many users something has. And if our average user is telling us it's too cluttered, that is a way to get there. And yes, it will be at an inconvenience for those requirements users. It's a couple of hundred. I can personally apologize to each and every one of them if that's needed. We gotta optimize for the average user experience because we gotta get SUS up.
Agreed, we do. What I want to do is take this. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to share this recording with Marcel. He's going to put together a recording about what we know from user research. Let me get him to respond just because he's much closer to the things that we've learned. But he can base it on this conversation also that we've had right here. So he can make sure that he's considering your points. For requirements, using it as an example, we agree with you, by the way. And Tori, I know, is working on guidance in pajamas around navigation. Tori, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we have a region for navigation in pajamas, so adding guidance for product teams to be able to reference just to determine whether or not it makes sense to add a high-level navigation item. I anticipate some pushback from product because, like you said, everyone wants to get their product area out there, and the more visible it is, the more likely it'll be adopted. But we do need some guidelines in place so that we can reduce the clutter. So we're working on that, foundations.
Or
More
you
closely with
can
Marcel.
you will have my help and partnership to make this happen,
Great,
because
thanks,
portfolio
Marcel.
management is where we have to sort of advocate standardizations. And so that's a long-term fix. But even right now, like if we create an issue and say, let's move requirements out, let's just see if the plan team can look at it and remove it. That's if 1 out of 10 items get out of the left nav, that's a 10% reduction in clutter, in my opinion.
That's awesome. Thanks, Anoop. And I think it's got to be very clear. This is not about the individual product manager is not going to decide on the global navigation. That has to happen at the global level, and product has. And in fact, I think I'm not sure, but I think UX kind of decides on that. Maybe somebody else. But yes, if I was doing something, like I will. Every product manager, if they're good at their job, should advocate that it should be in the main menu. But that doesn't mean we have tens and tens of product managers. So it's not up to them. And I was exaggerating a little bit about the 5 orders of magnitude or the 4, but it's 3 orders of magnitude. So this is the number of requirements, interactions that we recorded. It was 117 in July. And this is what we see for the menu item above it, merge request. It was 1.3 million in July.
And just to clarify, right, I think we are painting a broader brush. If we have user-informed research, you will not see product managers push back to, right? Because they also want to solve for the same problem. Yes, they want to have a growth hack. So they might advocate for having their thing in the menu for the early days so they can get some feedback, but that's totally different than all PMs should understand. If they don't, we'll make sure that they do that. They can't grow if the top engine doesn't grow. The top engine grows, then everything else grows. And I think you'll find reception there.
Yeah, I think Sid's point is that we did do user research, and the results of it were used inappropriately to make this decision. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. Sid, you said something interesting that my team has discussed, but we weren't sure how much openness there would be to it based on our company culture, but around UX owning what's in the nav. Where we've been hesitant to put up firm guardrails is that I know we try really hard not to block teams, but at the same time, what you're getting at is navigation is really, really important. It is at the crux of our user experience. Is that something where you consider it might be important enough to say, like, no, there's a gate here. We're the DRIs. You can't just, like, stage group teams can't just go add something to the left nav. We've got to
top left nav being under UX makes sense to me.
Okay.
But there's an extreme amount of difference between navigation and top left nav menu. There's like, this is 1%, and this is like that. There's every piece of functionality has to end up in our navigation. So let's make sure we focus on the right thing. But that UX decides what goes in the left makes sense. Like, in fact, if you're not cleaning this up, I'm going to clean it up because it has taken too long and it's hurting our users. So please own it. Feel free to make an MR and then let's run it by Eric and everyone else.
Okay,
Yeah,
and the left nav is
I'll
as far as I was going with that too. I know there's contextual navigation, all sorts of things that we wouldn't want to put guardrails around.
Yeah. The other thing is we are forming a foundations team, and there will be a PM in the foundations team as well. So that once, I think the home for top left nav decisions is the foundations team. And I wouldn't, and for now, I think that's fine, make the change, have UI own the left nav. But I think once the PM for the foundations team is there, then that team needs to own it.
Yeah, and it's top left nav, not left nav.
Top left.
That top nav. Like, you don't have to ask UX permission if you want to add one thing under infrastructure. I don't know.
Got it. Okay, you're saying the top level of the left nav. Yeah, okay, got it.
Sorry, top is a confusing word. Main left nav menu.
Anu, we'll have to work with you on this. I think my team can't spin up an MR around this. And then there's also some design work to be done around if we're going to take.
Why not?
I do not have the skills on my team. Changing stuff in the navigation has far-reaching technical
Oh,
implications.
sorry. I thought the MR to change the handbook that you.
Oh, no, yeah, no, we'll do that. We will do that.
Okay, got
Okay,
it.
cool. I just want to make sure you knew. I can't go take things out of the left nav myself. Okay, we're on the same page. Good deal.
Great.
And I'm looking at the agenda. I don't see anything else. Anyone have anything else you want to talk about? Any questions about our performance indicators?
Yeah, so the SIS score kind of went sideways, went a little bit better, but basically at a much lower level than it used to be, or a lower level than it used to be. I thought that, so GitLab.com has, the uptime has not been fantastic, but the speed has been much improved, and I thought that was hurting our SIS as well. So as we got a lot better at that, I hope for SIS to pick up a bit. I haven't seen that. Any ideas you have? I'm not sure it makes sense. Maybe it was just a weird expectation. I don't know.
No, we were hoping for the same thing. So I don't think it was like a weird thing to hope for. That's what we wanted to. That probably played somewhat into the stabilization that we saw, but there's no way for us to know with certainty. What we think may be happening is part of the reason why we've seen this downward trend is not necessarily because the usability of our product has actually gotten worse. It's because we have so many more new users in the product, and new users struggle so much more with the usability of our product than more mature users. Adam did a ton of research around this, including a qualitative study to follow up on the SUS. Adam, do you want to speak to this a little bit?
Yeah, what we found was really around that last question, question 10 in the SUS, where it's about learning GitLab, and that has consistently been a score within that one question that's been dragging us down.
Yeah. Sorry for the interruption. I've seen that, totally buy that it's tougher on new users. Have new users increased as a percentage of the population?
I'd have to look into that. Yeah.
It was, Christy, like you stated that, like, oh, as we have more users, but I'm not sure we have more users. Do you know?
I believe we have more users of the product, but I think what you're asking is, are we accounting for more new users in the survey?
Sure,
Yeah. And the answer is,
do we have more new users? Because I'm not sure about that.
yeah, Adam will have to go back and dig in and take a look at that. I think we've looked at it before, but I don't want to tell you for sure. But we're kind of at the same place you are, Sid, which is we're making changes based on the feedback that we're getting. We're hoping and expecting things to start ticking up, and they're just not yet. We're heartened that at least they're not going down anymore, but I also can't tell you that next quarter it won't go down again, right? This is one data point here is not a trend, unfortunately.
Yep.
So
thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Cool. Sorry for diving deep on something, but really appreciate how you responded to it. And thanks for the conversation. Really appreciate it.
it is my pleasure. Nothing to apologize for. This is great. This is how we get things done. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.